Dr. Jillian Whatley, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show to share your story with our viewers and our listeners. Could you please tell us what's going on in your life and in your K-12 career right now?
Hi, thank you for having me on the show, and I'm just glad to be in the space of another K-12 educator. Well, right now, I am the Executive Director of Student Support Services in Clarke County School District. I am also an adjunct professor at Georgia State University. Oh. And I also do a lot of implicit bias training with the Academy of Creative Coaching, where I'm their resident expert in that lane. Okay. But what's happening now? Gosh, it's the summer, and we know as leaders, what do we do during the summer? We plan for the next year, right?
Absolutely.
So, this was the first year for our students to come back and return to in-person learning. So we've learned a lot over the last year. Our students have changed, our teachers have changed. And so this has given us an opportunity to kind of sit back and say, what do we need to provide for our students and staff coming up in the next year? So right now, that's a huge bucket of our work right now. And sure. Some of that may include, like, we saw uptick in bullying, our disciplinary infractions. We needed to be more robust with our SEL, not only for our students, but for our staff. And so those are some of the things that we're working on, so we can roll that out in the fall. And also in my personal life, I have a 10-year-old daughter, so she's going to middle school. So I'm in the throes of also working with that. And, it's really interesting to be in this seat as an ED over nursing, psychology, social work, discipline, and all those things that I supervise. Because when I'm talking to parents, I'm not only talking as a leader, talking as somebody who I have a young child. Absolutely. And COVID-19 impacted her just so I was going through it in two ways, one as a leader and then one as a mom. And so it resonates with me, and I can sense some people's anxiety and stress around that.
Yeah, that's fair, and so you do wear those two hats. And I actually think it helps because it gives you insight and you can be more empathetic with other parents that are going through some of these challenges as it relates to the pandemic and just coming back into school full time this school year. So how long have you been in education, Dr. Whatley?
I think I'm going up into 15 years. I started out, let me tell you a little bit about my teaching career, which was very, very brief. It did not last long. I always knew I would probably do something different. Both of my parents were educators, and my dad was a school counselor. My mom was a social worker. Okay. So student service is kind of in my blood, I think. But I started out as a teacher in a residential psychiatric facility. Okay. And then I moved on to, and that was in Tennessee. And then I moved on and came to Atlanta to Marietta City Schools. And I was a teacher in a alternative school. Okay. And then after that, I met a school psychologist while there. And I was like, gosh, I want to be a school psychologist. So I moved to Washington, D.C., went to Gallaudet University, got my master's and my specialist in school psych with an emphasis in deafness, and began practicing in PG County public schools. And then after a while, I decided to come on back south. And here we are in 2008. And I've been here ever since, working in Gwinnett, Atlanta Public Schools, and now Clarke County. And I'm happy to be here. I call my daughter, she's a Georgia peach. And I don't know, I feel like a peach, but then I'm kind of from Alabama, so I don't know. But okay, that's how long, and that's been the depth and breadth of my career. Most of my career, I've tried to really focus on myself and become an expert in certain areas around behavior, around discipline. And so that's my jam right there, even special education. And so, I'm probably one of the few people who actually work pre-K through GNETs and psychiatric. Like, I've worked at each level through the continuum of services. And so I bring a different lens to the conversation around students who have challenges and also need special education eligibility or interventions and those types of things. And I'm still here.
You're still here, and you've been a lot of places. And the irony of it is, a lot of the places you've been, I've been. It's really crazy. Like, I used to live in Prince George's. My uncle lived in Fort Washington, Maryland, until he passed. I actually went to Prince George's Community College.
I used to teach there.
Oh my goodness. Wow. In Largo, Maryland. Oh my goodness.
In Largo, Maryland. I lived not far on Harry S. Truman around the corner.
Wow.
I lived in an apartment around the corner. That's
Small
crazy.
world.
Small world.
And I actually used to work in Gwinnett County as well. So yeah, we definitely have very similar paths.
Absolutely.
What do you like most, Dr. Whatley, about K-12 education? And what do you like least about K-12 education?
What I like most is the children.
Sure.
And the hope to be a part of something for their future.
Okay.
Creating a better future. I really enjoy that part.
Okay.
I came, like I said, from a lot of educators in my family. And so I knew I always did not want to be a principal because my aunt was a principal and she never looked like her wig was always twisted. So I was like, girl, whatever that's, I don't want that. But I've always been around educators, and my family was very active in the civil rights movement in Birmingham, Alabama. And so it's always been my passion to be very I'm an advocate, for the underdog or for those who have been forgotten so often in our communities. And so that keeps me where I am. Now, what I don't like is the politics and the bureaucracy. I don't feel like we should play politics on the backs of children. You need to, when we still have children who are experiencing food insecurity, housing insecurity, and so many other things, all the social determinants of health that are impacting their ability to function in a school.
Sure.
I was very blessed during pandemic, right? My daughter, I'm a doctor, her father has an MBA, but she also, while I was working, my mother lives with us, and my mother is a former educator, teacher, and social worker, as I've said before. So there was no gap for her. Does that make sense? And then also I was very skilled at making sure that she had social outlets even during the pandemic.
Sure.
We were very structured with that. But then I think about the countless children who did not have that, right? And that we're still not disrupting the education system enough to make sure that the playing field is not only equitable for some kids, but equitable for all.
Right.
We constantly want to keep getting things back to normal, but who says that was normal? That's who true. Says that was right? Yeah. And so I think this is an opportunity right now in education for us to change the landscape and do some things that are very different, kind of what we're doing in Clarke County. So, our teachers yelled and screamed, and rightfully so, that they didn't feel deserved, or like they were being seen or appreciated. Mm-hmm. So we're creating a series of wellness initiatives for them for next year.
Awesome.
That's just one thing. But shouldn't we have already been doing that?
100%. 100%.
Sure. And so the things that we know we should have been doing, I'm hoping that we can continue to do and do it with more bigger, and also do it more tenaciously. Another thing is, when we talk about academic and student achievement, we tend to sometimes focus on curriculum, but there are so many other things around us that impact student achievement, culture and climate, relationships with children, morale of staff. You can buy a new curriculum, but if your staff is not on board and they don't feel like you care, or as the building leader, well, that's just another curriculum that the board has approved to get. And so we've got to become in education now, more focused on the whole child, the whole staff member and what they need so that we can yield some great results. And that's sometimes a sticking point for me. And I'm not sure, I'm sure I'm not alone in that.
No, I agree. I agree totally. And, I agree with what you said earlier too. I mean, why weren't we doing this already? I mean, some of this stuff, common sense isn't always common practice. I'll have to say that. And so it's common sense that we should be taking care of our teachers, because if they're on empty, how can they pour into our students, our children? And I think we have to make sure that we are not only supporting our staff members, but we're also, like you said, supporting the whole child and making sure that they're equipped with everything they need to be successful. So I appreciate you sharing that, Sometimes our K-12 profession also gets a bad rap. Why do you believe that K-12 education is a noble profession?
I think it's noble because we work with children. And the fact of the matter is the education workforce is the backbone. Well, the education landscape is the backbone of the workforce. So if 100%. look, if we don't pour into the children, there's not going to be a workforce. So and so that's important to me. You know, we want folks to take our jobs in the future. That's the goal. I don't plan to sit in this role forever. You know, I think once you enter a role, you should then begin to develop your succession plan. I don't think you should stay. You get stale and old in those positions, you know, and I think you should stay fresh. So my thinking around that is we just need to really tap into where our workforce is going and how we can educate our children to be able to beat that workforce in the future. So kind of like what we were talking about earlier, you know, we're noticing even in the numbers in undergrad and graduate school that students aren't really going into education. Those numbers have like plummeted. And so a lot of students are going into STEM and STEAM and science and math and technology, all of those things, and even the arts. And so how can we bring that into the school, not only in middle school, but in earlier ages? As I was explaining to you earlier, when my daughter started taking coding classes in kindergarten.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
But guess what? She was in private school and I was paying for that. I thought that was nonsense. I was like, why can't we have this in public school? And I've been interviewed tons of times around me having my child in private school, and I work for public education, because I think sometimes our dollars in public education don't go to the right program.
Sure.
And I think if we got to think outside the box. And I'll send you a video, Dr. Williams, that I want you to watch. It's almost like education has not changed. Even in certain spaces, we're still lining kids up in rows. I mean, spaces are still the same. It's like,
not good.
I mean, right. And so I took a chance to put my child in a school where John Ossoff, who's our senator for Georgia, he went to that school. But they did some amazing things there, Dr. Williams. I mean, my baby was learning about bias in kindergarten.
Wow.
So she calls her grandmother her ally. And she's been saying, yeah, her grandmother is her ally. And so, yes, is reading math and science and all those things important? Absolutely. But there are also things that are equally important, like your social emotional development, or your ability to understand what another person needs and wants and desires, and how can you patch that and put that in a curriculum where students are learning it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's important too, because you can be smart, but emotionally deficient.
Absolutely. Right.
If you can't get along with somebody, it doesn't matter how high your IQ is. People just don't want to talk to you or get along with you or play well with you, understand at all. And so, my goal for me, I think that I'm a very conceptual thinker. And I think that for me, I just love to try new things, be intentional, but be very strategic around it, and let the data guide us, but then also take chances and risks and look at what other people are doing in other spaces, not just in public education, but in private and independent schools in other countries, to see how we can bring that to our students to get the best bang for our buck. Like, I think our kids can do it in American schools. And in some spaces they are doing it, but in some spaces we got to do better.
Yeah, there's no equity in it, for sure. That's very true. We have pockets of excellence, but it's not across the board. But
yeah,
you definitely have a macro view of K-12 education. So you're definitely sounding like a future superintendent to me. What do you see in your future as a K-12?
It's amazing. I just finished the AASA superintendent program. I was grateful to be a part of that program. I was asked to join, and I was given 24 hours to decide. Wow. They're like, Jillian, come on. And I was like, do I really want to do this? But it was a blessing and a great experience. I do hope one day that I can be a superintendent, but what I'm most focused on is blooming where I am and learning where I am, right? Sure. In the space I am. And one thing I learned from the superintendent program is that sometimes people move up too fast and they're not learning what they need to learn at those levels. And so when we get into a cycle of title chasing, we forget that we're supposed to be learning a skill to make better for the next level, and so on. And so that's my prayer. It's like for me to be able to just sit, learn, and also timing is important, right? Absolutely. If I want to be a superintendent, like my daughter is 10 years old. Do I have time to sit in a school board meeting now? Maybe when she goes to college.
No, that's fair.
That's real. Because, I still am very active at her school, as a mom, and that's
Absolutely.
important to me. So I have to make sure I'm considering multiple variables. Have I had opportunities come my way? Absolutely. But I've turned them down because I'm a mom first, and I have to think about that. And so that matters to me. I don't want my daughter to ever grow up and say, you weren't there, you were always in a meeting. That would just hurt my heart. So yeah, so I see that in my future. I also see maybe being on the university level in some capacity even more. I've been doing that for a long time. And so I would like to expand that work and continuing to do my consulting work around DEI, like around implicit bias. I love that. That's my dissertation topic, was implicit bias as a contributing factor to disproportionality. It was super hard to get people to believe that was a topic that I needed to do. Because no one really wanted to talk about bias. And this was before George Floyd and all that. And people tend to want to deal with safe topics, not controversial topics. And I had a great dissertation chair, Dr. Edward Bowie, who believed in me and pushed that thing through. God rest his soul. He's in heaven. He's a former deputy superintendent in DeKalb County Schools. Yeah. And so that's what I see. And, probably just owning a little boutique or something like that. But it's got to be fun and work. So I'll probably be in two lanes. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you have it figured out, at least at this point in your life, the whole life balance. So that's really good. And you definitely have your priorities right, family first, above all. So yeah. And we only get one opportunity to raise our kids. I have a daughter that's a couple of years younger than your daughter. And hey, I'm very, very committed, even at this point in my career, to making sure that I'm present for her now. And I feel like I still have enough time left in my career to pursue all those other goals in the future. So absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't advise parents to be there for their kid, and I'm not doing the same for mine. So I hold myself to a greater accountability so that when I'm talking to parents and community members, that it's coming from an authentic place. Like I'm walking this walk with you, I'll tell people in a minute, like, even if I'm on a radio show or something, like, hey, after this, I got to go to the ballet practice. So like I'm that person. I think that's probably why the community and people connect with me, is because I rarely take that parent hat off. Like I can empathize, and also I'm a single mother, I get that. I had a failed relationship, but I bounced back through that. And so when I'm encountering people who have challenges with that, even in student support services, I'll lightly tell them my story because it's a testimony as well. Absolutely. And how my daughter and father and we work together to make sure she has what she needs emotionally, physically, psychologically, and those types of things. It can be done. Absolutely. And you still can have a career, even as a single parent, so it's not all doom and gloom, because some people feel like, oh, you're a single parent, like, the statistics will tell you one thing, right? But then my God tells me something else. So 100%.
Absolutely.
Totally agree with you. I will share with you, this is my book that I wrote about my mother and how she totally impacted, our lives. And, it's 4 educators, 2 of us are school administrators, and, this is living proof. And she did it basically on her own, at least for the first half of our lives, until she got married. So no, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I honestly think that that's a future book for you, if you don't know that already, because your story, you take that word history, his story, her story, your story is going to resonate and really help a lot of not only educators out there, but just women in your same position as well, that, it can be done. And
it can. And so it's interesting you say that. I have a book coming out. It's called Lessons for Our Daughters. So I'll make sure to give you a copy and bring you back on the show.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And it's in publishing now. It's being published right now. So we're going through the process right now. And I have some children's books coming out soon as well. So we got to come back and have me back. So we can talk about that. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. That is really cool. We got a lot of time with Dr. Whatley. This is really cool. But Dr. Whatley, I want to take this moment to honor you for all the great work that you've done in all the communities that you work in, whether it's the state of Maryland, the state of Georgia, your home state of Alabama. Really want to acknowledge you and celebrate you for all the great work you've done in K-12 education. You know, I really started this show because I wanted to celebrate and honor K-12 educators like yourself. And I'm very grateful for you coming on the show and sharing your story with our viewers. And so thank you.
And thank you for having me.
It's so great. I really am blessed to be able to even, you know, speak with you. And I'm grateful that you accepted my invitation to come on the show. And so I want to thank you for coming on the show. But before you leave, would you please give our viewers and our listeners some parting words of wisdom? Tell us how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Oh, my parting words of wisdom is to know your why.
Ooh.
Know your purpose. And the sooner you find your purpose, the better you will be. Because when those challenging waters come, you can hold steady to that. I know my purpose. I know why God has placed me here.
Sure.
And so I have to hold to that. And so I challenge everybody to get closer to that. I do a lot of consultation work. And Jillian Whatley, I incorporated as my company around DEI. I do a lot of implicit bias work with companies, school districts, and school systems and things of that nature. So if you want to get in contact with me, you can Jillian, JILLIAN.Whatley, WHATLEY @gmail.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Jillian Whatley. I'm a 70s baby, so we just stay the same. It's nothing else. Dr. Jillian Whatley. You can Google me and you'll find me. And I'm here to do the good work so we make our children have a better educational environment than what we've been doing in the past. So thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Williams.
You are so welcome. And I just ask one request of you. When your book comes out, would you be willing to come back on the show and share?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So good. So thank you so much, Dr. Whatley. And, you know, there's greatness within you. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I definitely wish you all the best. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.